Pilate then took Yeshua and had him flogged. The soldiers twisted thorn branches into a crown and placed it on his head, put a purple robe on him, and went out to him, saying over and over, "Hail, King of the Jews!" and hitting him in the face. Pilate went outside once more and said to the crowd, "Look, I'm bringing him out to you to get you to understand that I find no case against him." So Yeshua came out, wearing the thorn branch crown and the purple robe. Pilate said to them, "Look at the man." When head Kohanim and the temple guards saw him, they shouted, "Put him to death on the stake! Put him to death on the stake!" Pilate said to them, "You take him out yourselves and put him to death on the stake, because I find no case against him." The Judeans answered him, "We have a law. According to that law, he ought to be put to death because he made himself out to be the Son of God." On hearing this, Pilate became even more frightened. He went back into the headquarters and asked Yeshua, "Where are you from?" But Yeshua didn't answer. So Pilate said to him, "You refuse to speak to me? Don't you understand that it is in my power either to set you free or to have you executed on the stake?" Yeshua answered, "You would have no power over me if it hadn't been given to you from above. That is why, as the one handed me over to you is guilty of a greater sin." On hearing this, Pilate tried to find a way to set him free, but the Judeans shouted, "You set this man free? It means you're not a friend of the emperor." Everyone who claims to be a king is opposed to the emperor. When Pilate heard what they were saying, he brought Yeshua outside and sat down on the judge's seat in the place called the Pavement, in Aramaic, Gabta. It was about noon on preparation day for Pesach. He said to the Judeans, "Here's your king." They shouted, "Take him away! Take him away! Put him to death on the stake!" Pilate said to them, "You want me to execute your king on a stake?" The head Kohanim answered, "We have no king but the emperor." When Pilate handed Yeshua over to him to have him put to death on the stake. So they took charge of Yeshua. Carrying the stake himself, he went out to the place called the Skull in Aramaic, Golgotha. There they nailed him to the stake, along with two others, one on either side with Yeshua in the middle. Pilate also had a notice written and posted on the stake. It read, "Yeshua from Nazareth, the King of the Jews." Many of the Judeans read the notice because the place where Yeshua was put on the stake was close to the city, and it had been written in Hebrew, in Latin, and in Greek. The Judeans, head Kohanim, therefore said to Pilate, "Don't write the King of the Jews." But he said, "I am King of the Jews." Pilate answered, "What I have written, I have written." When the soldiers had nailed Yeshua to the stake, they took his clothes and divided them into 4 shares, a share for each soldier, with underrobe left over. Now the underrobe was seamless, woven in one piece from top to bottom. So they said to one another, "We shouldn't tear it in pieces. Let's draw for it." This happened in order to fulfill the words from the Tanakh. They divided my clothes among themselves and gambled for my robe. This is why the soldiers did these things. Nearby, Yeshua's execution stake stood his mother's sister Miriam, the wife of Cleophas, and Miriam from Magdala. When Yeshua saw his mother and the Talmud whom he loved standing there, he said to his mother, "Mother, this is your son." Then he said to his Talmud, "This is your mother." And from that time on, the Talmud took her into his own home. After this, knowing that all things had accomplished their purpose, Yeshua, in order to fulfill the words of the Tanakh, said, "I'm thirsty." A jar full of cheap, sour wine was there, so they soaked a sponge in the wine, coated it with oregano leaves, and held it up to his mouth. After Yeshua had taken the wine, he said, "It is accomplished." And letting his head droop, he delivered up his spirit. It was preparation day, and the Judeans did not want the bodies to remain on the stake on Shabbat, since it was a especially important Shabbat. So they asked Pilate to have his legs broken and bodies removed. The soldiers came and broke the legs of the first man who had been put on the stake beside Yeshua, then the legs of the other one. But when they got to Yeshua and saw that he was already dead, they didn't break his legs. However, one of the soldiers stabbed his side with a spear, and at once blood and water flowed out. The man who saw it had testified about it, and his testimony is true, and he knows he tells the truth. You too can trust. For these things happen in order to fulfill the passage of the Tanakh. Not one of his bones will be broken. And again, another passage says, they will look at him whom they have pierced. After this, Yosef of Ramatayim, who was a Talmud of Yeshua, but a secret one out of fear of the Judeans, asked Pilate if he could have Yeshua's body. Pilate gave his consent, so Yosef came out and took the body away. Also Nicodemus, who at first had gone to see Yeshua by night, came with some 70 pounds of spices, a mixture of myrrh and aloes. They took Yeshua's body and wrapped it up in linen sheets and spices, keeping with Judean burial practice. In the vicinity where it had been executed was a garden, and in the garden was a new tomb in which no one had ever been buried. So because it was preparation day for the Judeans, and because the tomb was close by, that is where they buried Yeshua. Early on, the first day of the week, while it was still dark, Miriam from Magdala went to the tomb and saw that the stone had been removed from the tomb. So she came running to Shimon Kepha and the other Talmud, the one Yeshua loved, and said to them, "They've taken the Lord out of the tomb, and we don't know where they've put him." Then Kepha and the other Talmud started for the tomb. They both ran, but the other Talmud outran Kepha and reached the tomb first. Stooping down, he saw the linen burial sheets lying there, but didn't go in. Then, following him, Shimon Kepha arrived, entered the tomb, and saw the burial sheets lying there. Also the cloth that had been around his head, lying not with the sheets, but in a separate place, and still folded up. Then the other Talmud, who had arrived at the tomb first, also went in. He saw, and he trusted. They had not yet come to understand that the Tanakh teaches that the Messiah has to rise from the dead. So the Talmud returned home. Some of the Talmudim returned home, but Miriam stood outside, crying. As she cried, she bent down, peered into the tomb, and saw two angels in white sitting where the body Yeshua had been, one at the head and one at the feet. "Why are you crying?" they asked her. "They took my Lord," she said to them. "I don't know where they have put him." As she said this, she turned around and saw Yeshua standing there, but she didn't know it was he. Yeshua said to her, "Lady, why are you crying? Whom are you looking for?" Thinking he was the gardener, she said to him, "Sir, if you're the one who carried him away, just tell me where you put him, and I'll go and get him myself." Yeshua said to her, "Miriam." Turning, she cried out to him in Hebrew, "Rabboni," that is, teacher. "Stop holding on to me," Yeshua said to her, "because I haven't gone back to my Father. But go to my brothers and tell them I'm going back to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God." Miriam of Magdala went to the Talmudim with the news that she had seen the Lord and that he had told her this. In the evening that same day, the first day of the week, when the Talmudim were gathered together behind locked doors out of fear of the Judeans, Yeshua came, stood in the middle, and said, "Shalom Aleichem." Having greeted them, he showed them his hands and his side. The Talmudim were overjoyed to see the Lord. "Shalom Aleichem," Yeshua repeated. "Just as the Father sent me, I myself am also sending you." Having said this, he breathed on them and said to them, "Receive the Ruach HaKodesh. If you forgive someone's sins, their sins are forgiven. If you hold them, they are held." Now Toma, whose name means twin, one of the 12, was not with them when Yeshua came. When the other Talmudim told him, "We have seen the Lord," he replied, "Unless I see the nails marked in his hands, put my finger into the place where the nails were, and put my hand in his side, I refuse to believe it." A week later, his Talmudim were once more in a room. This time, Toma was with them. Although the doors were locked, Yeshua came, stood among them, and said, "Shalom Aleichem." Then he said to Toma, "Put your finger here. Look at my hands. Take your hand and put it into my side. Don't be lacking in trust, but have trust." Toma answered him, "My Lord, my God." Yeshua said to him, "Have you trusted because you've seen me? How blessed are those who do not see me, but trust anyway." In the presence of the Talmudim, Yeshua performed many other miracles which have not been recorded in this book. But those which have been recorded are here so that you may have trust that Yeshua is the Messiah, the Son of God, and that by this trust you may have life because of who he is. Also, this Yeshua appeared again to the Talmudim in Lake Tiberias. Here is how that happened. Shimon, Kepha, and Toma, whose name means twin, were together with Nathanael and Cana in the Gilgal, the sons of Zebedee, and the two other Talmudim. Shimon, Kepha, said, "I'm going fishing." They said to him, "We're coming with you." They went out and got into the boat, but that night they didn't catch anything. However, just as the day was breaking, Yeshua stood on the shore, but the Talmudim didn't know who he was. He said to them, "You don't have any fish, do you?" "No," they answered. He said to them, "Throw in your net to starboard, and you'll catch some." So they threw in their net, and there were so many fish in it that they couldn't haul it aboard. The Talmud Yeshua loved said to Kepha, "It's the Lord!" On hearing it, it was the Lord. Shimon Kepha threw off his coat because he was stripped for work and plunged into the lake. But the other Talmudim followed in the boat, dragged the net full of fish, for they weren't far from the shore, only about 100 yards. When they stepped ashore, they saw a fire burning coals with a fish on it and some bread. Yeshua said to them, "Bring some of the fish you have just caught." Shimon Kepha went up and dragged the net ashore. It was full of fish, 153 of them. But even with so many, the net wasn't torn. Yeshua said to them, "Come and have breakfast." None of the Talmudim dared ask him, "Who are you?" They knew he was the Lord. Yeshua came and took the bread and gave it to them, and did the same with the fish. This was now the third time Yeshua had appeared to the Talmudim after being raised from the dead. After breakfast, Yeshua said to Shimon Kepha, "Shimon bar Yochanan, do you love me more than these?" He replied, "Yes, Lord. You know I'm your friend." He said to him, "Feed my lambs." A second time he said to him, "Shimon bar Yochanan, do you love me?" He replied, "Yes, Lord. You are my friend." He said to him, "Shepherd my sheep." The third time he said to him, "Shimon bar Yochanan, are you my friend?" Shimon was hurt that he questioned him a third time, "Are you my friend?" So he replied, "Lord, you know everything. You know I'm your friend." Yeshua said to him, "Feed my sheep. Yes, indeed, I tell you, when you were younger, you put on your clothes and went where you wanted. But when you grew old, you stretch out your hands, and someone else will dress you and carry you where you do not want to go." He said this to indicate the kind of death which Kepha would bring glory to God. Then Yeshua said to him, "Follow me." Kepha turned and saw Talmud Yeshua especially loved following behind, the one who had leaned against him at the supper, and asked, "Who is the one who is betraying you?" On seeing him, Kepha said to Yeshua, "Lord, what about him?" Yeshua said to him, "If you want him to stay on until I come, what is that to you? You, follow me." Therefore the word spread among the brothers that the Talmud would not die. However, Yeshua didn't say they wouldn't die, but simply, "If you want him to stay on until I come, what is it to you?" This one is the Talmud who is testifying about these things and who has recorded them. We know that his testimony is true, but there are also many other things Yeshua did. And if they are all to be recorded, I don't think the whole world could contain the books that would have been written.